What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and it's Tuesday, so it's time for another top 10 video. This time my patrons voted, and I'll be giving you my top 10 homebrew subclasses, ones that I've worked on, designed myself, or collaborated with someone else on. So I wanted to separate that from the last homebrew subclass video. This is stuff that I've either, again, wholly designed, and there's something new that I started working on literally this morning that I'll preview that's kind of about halfway fleshed out. I'll do that towards the end. Before we dive into that, though, I wanted to talk to you about the returning sponsor for today's video, Wanderer's Guide to Merchants and Magic. We covered this in an earlier ad spot, and since then they are 3,300% funded so far, with about 48 hours left to go at this point. They've unlocked a ton of different stretch goals, adventures, an auction adventure called The Highest Bid, 3 bonus merchants from Sly Flourish, DM Dave and Ann Gregerson, a bunch of other magic items as well. And if they pass the 100,000 euro mark, they're going to add virtual tabletop ready maps, digital tokens, and so on. And they're also going to do a larger print run of the hardcover version as well, so some pretty awesome things there. We can go ahead and showcase the Kickstarter right here. They are in a pretty good spot, as you can see. And I just wanted to show there's a sample of the kind of wandering merchant here, who is the one who gave it the name. This is, I think it's Azan the Wanderer, and their celestial companion here, Jaziel, which are pretty cool, and all of the stuff that this merchant particularly carries, but 2 cool new magic items here. The Key to Anywhere, which kind of works like you said, and one that I thought I'd showcase, the Spellbreaker's Axe, which has amazing art here as well. It's a very rare great axe that has a +1 to attack and damage, and when you hit a creature with this weapon, they must make a DC 15 Charisma save. On a fail, they're unable to cast any spells, and the magical properties of each non-magical artifact or non-artifact magic item it is carrying is suppressed until the end of its next turn. So literally breaks their spells. I thought this was pretty cool. Check the link in the description, which is a referral link, which lets them know how many folks came over from Nerd Immersion. So thank you again to Wanderer's Guide to Merchants and Magic for sponsoring this video. Number 10. Arcana domain updated. Now, this is a newer series of things I started working on in my spare time when I realized that one of my players is an Arcana domain cleric, and how much it suffers from, in some instances anyway, being coming out when it did. Kind of most of the stuff that was in Sword Coast Adventures Guide, especially the stuff that wasn't reprinted later, kind of fell into that weird design hole of where it stood in the development of 5e, and some of the things suffered. So I started going through a process of trying to update all of the older cleric domains to make them more in line with some of the newer stuff we've seen, like Twilight Cleric and Peace Cleric. So this is pretty new, and I will eventually release this either as a free PDF, or currently it's in a Google Drive format, which folks have seen it already, but I'll show you here. So this is so high on the list because I didn't really do too much except alter a few things. So I changed out a couple of the spells here. You can see I added everything in red is something that I've changed. I added Silence as a 2nd level spell, Haste as a 3rd level spell, Odaluk's Brazilian Sphere as a 7th level spell, and Telekinesis as a 4th level spell, and Telekinesis as a 5th level spell. Just to change it up, give it a little more viability there. And then I changed out their previous one, again, was tied very heavily to Cleric, original base Cleric, which had like Turn Undead and Destroy Undead, and they had like Abjure, or basically turn one creature or destroy that banishment thing. Instead of destroying them, it would banish kind of an extra planar creature. Well, since then, we've received the Oath of the Watcher's Paladin, which had this ability, which is just a direct copy-paste here, Abjure the Extra Planar, which allowed you to cover more creatures with this list, and it affected all of them, basically allowing you to turn all of these different creatures with a Wisdom saving throw within 30 feet, whereas the original version of the Arcana Cleric only lets you use it on one specific creature within 30 feet, and then again, if they were of a certain challenge rating or lower, it would banish them. Because it was so specific and only based on one singular creature, my player, who was an Arcana Domain Cleric in 17 levels of playing over several years, never used that ability once. Thankfully, with Tasha's Cauldron and the additional uses for Channel Divinity, he has a reason to do it other than turn undead. But I thought the other abilities worked pretty well. I toyed with possibly giving you expertise in the Arcana skill, but I figured I'd keep it as it is. And then Spellbreaker had been pretty useful in our game. You know, mass healing word, hitting 3 people and being able to possibly dispel spells was pretty useful. Potent spellcasting comes up all the time, especially synergizes well with the 2 cantrips. And then again, Arcane Mastery is pretty powerful, so we left that as it is as well. Number 9. My 4 elements monk fix. Now, I did an entire video on this, so I don't want to dive into it too much, and it wasn't entirely by me. There was this really great 4 elements remastered document that was out. I can put a link to this Google Drive if you want to check it out. But I did take it a step further because I thought there was some issues there. I made, again, there's a whole video on it here, but I also took and made a whole document where basically I made it so that you could really feel like you were controlling the elements. You start off by learning the 4 different elemental-based cantrips. You can just have those all the time, which is just a thing you should be able to do. You can spend key points to cast Absorb Elements. Again, you're mastering the elements. And then I changed up how you learned your elements. Here you learn 2 disciplines at 3rd level, and you get 2 more at 6, 11, and 17. And whenever you learn one, you can replace another one. And then I put in some better, I think, codified language around how to upcast these, where I used sort of the Sun Soul Monk's ability, where the maximum number of key points that you can spend on a spell equals half your monk level. So you can spend key points to upcast it. So I have, for example, a 5th level monk can use Sweeping Cinder Strike to cast Burning Hands. You can spend 2 key points to cast it as a 2nd level spell. So if you really want to dump a ton of key points in to cast a very high level version of a lower level spell, you can. I don't see any downside to doing that. At 6th level, I gave you the ability when you finish a short or long rest to get resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. And you can change it on a short or long rest. I think this was inspired by the Fiend Warlock's ability to have resistance and change it out. At 11th level, I gave you Elemental Weapon, the spell that you can cast, but you can apply it to your unarmed strikes. I'm going to say unarmed strikes, I'll throw it in here this time, or monk weapons. Once per short or long rest, that just adds a d4 elemental damage. And for 4 key points, you can cast Elemental Bane using Wisdom. And if a creature succeeds on its saving throw, you get a key point back, so you don't waste all of that. And then I made my Avatar of the Elements ability for 17, which is you can cast the investiture spells, each one of them individually, once per long rest for free. Investiture of air, flame, ice, and stone. I originally had this language: if you use your action to cast a spell or use a discipline, as a bonus action, you can make an unarmed strike a flurry of blows. I'm going to delete that because now we have Key Fueled Strike as a class feature from Tasha's Cauldron, which is if you use an action to spend a key point, you can make a bonus action unarmed strike. And then basically what I did was I started copying over all of these into my document here, but I realized that I kind of just, all I did was take out a few instances, right? I took out Become the Teapot, for example, because Absorb Elements, I made a base feature. I added in one at 6th level called Fury of the Dragon, because Dragon's Breath as a spell didn't exist when this document was made, so it lets you cast the Dragon Breath spell targeting yourself. I changed up a little bit of the language for Water Whip to allow it to work with spells. And then the only other thing I really changed, I think, was, I didn't even give it a name, was at 17th level, Immolate, or Immolation is a spell. Then they didn't have that listed here. Oh, I pulled out Avatar of the Elements because I gave the investiture spells as a 17th level ability that you could just do. And yeah, they have all of these other high level, 5th level spells, right? You've got Cone of Cold, you've got Transmute Rock, Maelstrom, Wall of Stone, all of these, but Immolation is a spell that's also 5th level that should fall into that and was out when all of these came out. So it'll be the same. You can cast the Immolation spell for 5 key points. Again, it's my best without having to tear down 4 elements monk and bring it back up from the ground up. I think it does a pretty good job. I never got a chance to play test it though, so I'd love to see how it works actually using this in combat. Number 8. I updated the Death Domain Cleric as well. I feel like the Death Domain is really unfortunate, again, once again, a product of its time. It also had some of the weirdest language in it, Whereas in the player's handbook, everything says like you gain this or you gain that. The death domain's wording is the cleric gains this, the cleric chooses this. So I changed all that language and I made some updates. So as you can see here, I swapped out, these again are giving us access to new spells. So if I were to ever publish this, I'd have to use the DM's Guild because I chose spells that are not ones that are part of the open game license. But we swapped out one of the 3rd level spells, which I believe is Animate Dead, for the new spell from Tasha's Cauldron, Spirit Shroud. And we swapped out one of the 5th level spells for Enervation. I thought that made sense. And I made some changes to the way the abilities work because I thought it needed to work better. Reaper lets you learn a Necromancy cantrip. There's only 3 as it stands right now. And when you cast a Necromancy cantrip, it will let you target 2 creatures, but the 2 creatures needed to be within 5 feet of one another. My thought process is this is supposed to be like you're reaping with a scythe, but none of the spells let you do that. So I just said when you would normally target 1 creature, you can target 2 creatures instead. So whatever the range on Chill Touch, Sapping, Sting, or Toll the Dead is, you can now target 2, essentially giving you a lower free version of Twin Spell, but allowing you to pick 2 targets. The Channel Divinity was originally, it's a melee attack, and when you use it, you can deal extra, and when you hit with a melee attack, deal extra necrotic damage. It was 5 plus double your cleric level. Now, that could be a decent amount of damage, but it didn't give any, like, that number is pretty static, and it's nice if you're going to do something that happens when it's guaranteed on a hit. It can be boosted by criticals. So I used sort of the same numbers for the light domain cleric here. I made it 2d damage is 2d10 plus your cleric level. So that way, if you do happen to crit on this, you can do 4d10. So you get a little bit of a swing there. Again, it's not a great thing, and it is only single target, but it has some benefits. I changed the 6th level ability to basically be Elemental Adept for necrotic damage. So necrotic damage you deal ignores resistance to necrotic damage. I left it as base, just necrotic damage you deal. It originally was from your Channel Divinity or from spells you cast. I left it just necrotic damage, so that way your Divine Strike ability at level 8, and if you manage to get necrotic damage from any other way, it'll help there. And then necrotic damage that you roll, you can treat any roll of a 1 as a 2, which I thought was a nice little power boost there. Divine Strike does necrotic damage, and again, so that'll benefit from inescapable destruction. And lastly, Improved Reaper was basically the same thing as Reaper, but it had to be 2 creatures within 5 feet, and it was only spells of 1st through 5th level, and it had to be a single target spell. I changed it to be any spell, and the spell can instead target 2 creatures within range. So this is limited, 1, by your spell slots, and there's actually not that many necrotic spells in the game. So I was looking through that to see, and I went and looked up necrotic spells. Like I said, there's not too many, and again, it needs to be a single target spell. So if we were to look at higher than 5th level spells, because that's really what we're talking about here, because this one is only specifically 1st through 5th level, a lot of these that we're looking at here are area of effect. We have Finger of Death, which would be 1, but it is a 7th level spell. This is also your capstone ability in the class here. And the limitation for Finger of Death in this instance is how many times you can cast Finger of Death. You can't cast it that often because you really typically will have 1, maybe 2 7th level slots. Then we scroll down again. Most of these are all single target. Eye Bite, I believe, is a single target, so that would allow you to get 2 uses of Eye Bite, so that could be interesting there. Harm, again, you don't get a ton of 6th level spells there. It is single target as well. And then I think that's it. And then everything else is pretty much 1st through 5th level, so it would have kind of been there anyway. I just made the range not 2 creatures next to each other. I think, again, Death Domain was kind of always laughable because Grave Domain came out and it was ridiculously better in every way. But the way I've seen it is Grave Domain is supposed to protect people from dying or help to protect their allies. Death Domain is for killing. Now, I realize that Grave Domain does have the ability to grant vulnerability, which is a pretty good killing tool, but a lot of the other abilities are, protecting an ally, negating a critical hit, healing an ally better. Maybe we should have taken the vulnerability off and added it to this and given the Grave Domain something else, but you let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 7. I very much liked the Phoenix Sorcerer subclass, and it has a tie into my homebrew world, so I thought it would fit. And one of my players decided to play it, but I realized that it was a little bit on the underpower side, so I decided to make some updates to that class. So I think I might have covered this in a previous video, but I kept a lot of the abilities, but I made some adjustments where I thought it made sense. So one of your main features is the Mantle of Flame feature. At 5th level, you can expend, I added this, at 5th level, you can expend 5 sorcery points to use this feature an additional time, even if you have expended all normal uses. At 5th level, this would be your entire bank of sorcery points, and there is currently, with the exception of expending spell slots to get sorcery points back, that's going to burn your whole list to get you to use this ability once more, which I thought was pretty good. I also gave them additional spells, which, again, we've seen now in the 2 new sorcerers, so I would need to do that. I also gave them access to the Sacred Flame cantrip, and these were the spells that I gave this particular Phoenix Sorcerer here, which were Fairy Fire. It looks like I'm just trying to read through them because I don't know what order I gave them in. Fairy Fire, Feather Fall, Scorching Ray, Calm Emotions, Fireball, Mass Healing Word, Fire Shield, Death Ward, and Flame Strike and Raise Dead were the different spells. So a little bit of healing, a little bit of damage. And then Phoenix Spark. I think I left this one pretty much... Oh, I think I left it the same. If you use this feature while under the effects of Mantle of Flame, it instead deals fire damage equal to... That's the same, but I have when Mantle of Flame ends in this manner, it can be used again without requiring a long rest. So what originally happened was, you know, it does some damage. If you're reduced to 0 hit points, you do some damage to folks. If you're under Mantle of Flame and this happens, it goes off and your Mantle of Flame immediately ends. I said that if that situation very specifically happens, you get to use Mantle of Flame again without requiring a long rest, and that is a once a long rest ability. You can ignore Bloodline Recovery there. Here's the spells. And then I had, let's see, I think Nourishing Fire I kept the same. When you finish a spell, you can cast, that's the same. And Phoenix, Form of the Phoenix is the same. I don't know if I added it in here. I believe at some point I added in you can use this twice per long rest, but I might have made that, that actually is a magic item, never mind. So yeah, this is basically what it is. I added this ability that when Mantle of Flame goes down via Phoenix Spark, you can use it again. I added in the extra spells, and then you can spend key sorcery points to basically access Mantle of Flame an additional time. So there you go. Number 6. I made some updates to the Purple Dragon Knight as well, which I think is one of the weakest subclasses in the game. Now, I might change this to some other name to make it unique, but basically, here's what I did. And someone was nice enough on Reddit to go ahead and compile everything that I said in that video into a document. So here's what I chose to do. Whenever you use the Second Wind ability, allies within 60 feet of you regain a number of hit points equal to your fighter level plus your charisma modifier. Additionally, allies that can see or hear you can use their reaction to move up to their movement speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. And this is where I thought it would be interesting to tap into the fighter's Second Wind ability and alter it and have that be the basis for this subclass. You gain additional uses of your Second Wind ability at 7th and 15th level. This is the first time we've ever seen that. That's multiple uses of Second Wind because you have features that are tied to it. I gave Master Tactician at 7th level. You can use the help action as a bonus action and can do so from a range of 60 feet instead of 5, provided you can see or hear you. So this is kind of tapping into the Mastermind Warlock, but I made everything a static 60 feet. Inspiring Surge, when you use your Action Surge feature, you can choose a number of creatures equal to your Charisma modifier within 60 feet of you. That creature can make a melee or range attack provided it can see or hear you. I can't remember if I said it had to be a reaction or not, but I think it was intentionally supposed to be a reaction, but this isn't listed here. Bulwark at 15th level. When an ally within 60 feet of you fails a saving throw, you can use your reaction to allow them to reroll that saving throw with a bonus equal to your charisma modifier. You can use this ability a number of times equal to charisma modifier times per long rest. If we were going to change this to be modernized, we would make this proficiency bonus times per long rest as opposed to charisma modifier times per long rest. And then for Final Stand, the last ability, you get temporary hit points. Your Rallying Cry, this ability we got at 3rd level, grants temporary hit points equal to your fighter level plus your charisma modifier. So not only do you use this to heal your allies, you also give them temporary hit points. The creator of this also provided some of their benefits off to the side here. They were saying to move half of your movement speed rather than your entire movement speed. For Bulwark, it says when an ally within 60 feet fails a saving throw, I would simply change it to when an ally within 60 feet of you that you can see fails a saving throw. I had made it when an ally fails a saving throw, they're saying that they need to be able to see you. And then they're saying your Rallying Cry now also allows affected allies to make a melee or ranged spell attack as part of the same reaction. So either way, I think this is way better. I think it could be interesting enough to play. It also even could be for a 3-level dip into fighter. This ability to get second wind to heal your allies could be pretty useful. Number 5. One of the first homebrews I ever did was make an additional totem for use with the Totem Warrior Barbarian. Now I'm looking at this, having talked about it and put this together years ago and saying, well, maybe some of this should get changed. And that was, of course, a dragon totem. So if we go over here and take a look, first of all, if you choose this totem at 3rd level, you choose a dragon type, right? We could add gem dragons to this when it comes out. But when raging, your body becomes covered in scales of your totem dragon, granting you a +2 to AC, and you gain resistance to the primary damage type of the respective totem's breath weapon. So, right, if you choose a red dragon, you are covered in red dragon scales and get resistance to fire damage. The difference was I was looking back at, I thought about the Bear Barbarian, right, which is resistance to all damage types except for psychic. This would give you 1 damage resistance, but also a +2 to AC. So if you wanted to be the dual wielding or the 2-handed weapon Barbarian and didn't want to have to worry about trying to get an animated shield or something like that, you still get a +2 to AC due to your dragon scales. I also thought that worked well because we've seen sort of the bonus to AC from the Sorcerer, the Dragon Sorcerer. And then again, if we did add in gem dragons and we had the official types like we have from the Dragonborn, this could be a potential way to get resistance to radiant damage or psychic damage or something like that. Now, the 6th level ability I think is way too powerful for what 6th level abilities are for the Totem Warrior right now. Although I will say, with the addition of the Tiger Totem, which lets you basically get 2 free skill proficiencies at 6th level, most of them seem relatively ribbon-ish in that they're not super mechanically beneficial. Eagle has some benefits allowing you to see stuff farther as closer, but there's not really specific rules for that. Your carrying capacity being doubled is useful as well, an advantage on strength checks. So what I had here originally was you got blind sight out to 30 feet, and that's way too strong compared to the other ones. And then I also, for some reason, said you got advantage on perception checks. That seems like way too much. I know that that's too much, so that's got to change. So I even think blind sight is too powerful at 6th level out to 30 feet. You could maybe make it blind sight out to 10 feet, maybe 15 feet, but I still feel like that's mechanically too powerful. You could make it dark vision. Dark vision wouldn't be the worst thing. Dark vision out to 60 feet, or it extends your dark vision another 60 feet if you already have it. That's better, as far as balance goes. You could just make it advantage on perception checks. But again, these do seem pretty mechanically powerful compared to these. Although again, proficiency in 2 skills is also very powerful. So what would you do here? I'm very curious. We could try to maybe tap into the frightful presence concept of dragons. Maybe you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. That might be something that someone gets. Oh wait, that's what the bear Oh no, Bear Totem, just, no, I guess maybe not. We could do that. Maybe you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. I'm not sure. I don't know what I have or what I should do. For the Spirit Walker feature, which is just you can cast Commune with Nature, I just said if you take a Dragon Totem feature of any one, when you use Commune with Nature, you can also seek out dragons, because Commune with Nature gives you a specific list of creatures you can try to find. I added dragons. I figured that made sense. And then what I added for 14th level was I went for more of a defensive option, which is my way to sort of say, like, oh, you can have like some aspect of their legendary resistance, which obviously it's not. Maybe I should change that flavor text. But while raging, you have advantage on all saving throws. So I mean, that's powerful. It's your capstone ability within the subclass, but everybody probably wants some sort of dragon breath ability. I guess maybe that could be the 14th one. You get some sort of breath weapon tied to your dragon totem, but I still wanted to keep with, I don't know. I didn't want to go that route just because I feel like, I don't know if I was trying to just subvert expectations, but I also liked having a more defensive version of a Totem Warrior, which is not something we really see. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to go back and make the updates, and if you've played this, it's been out on Reddit for years, so if you've had a chance to play it, let me know what your thoughts are and what tweaks you made. Number 4. I'm a huge fan of luck gods and goddesses, and I feel like there's not a really good way to replicate that currently in 5e, so I thought I should make my own luck domain, which I did several years ago. I haven't changed it, but maybe some of the spells need to be updated, but let me know. Maybe we can make some updates, and then I'll release it for everybody to use. So I gave the domain spells were Bless, Guiding Bolt, Enhance Ability, Mirror Image, Blink, Remove Curse, Death Ward, Freedom of Movement, Circle of Power, and Mislead. There's obviously all of the new Critical Role Dunamancy spells, which some of those could be Fortune's Favor and things like that could be a very good fit for this. Bonus proficiencies. At first level, you gain proficiency in all gaming sets. Again, that was something just to kind of tie into that. And I should add heavy armor as well, something like this, because we've seen the sort of the power creep of clerics to get more abilities at level 1. But their ability here is Beginner's Luck. As a bonus action, you grant yourself or a creature you touch advantage on their next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. This is Wisdom modifier times per long rest. I would still probably keep that Wisdom modifier times per long rest, but I might make this as a bonus action, choose a creature within 30 feet as opposed to touch. So rather than you having to be right next to someone if they're within 30 feet, so it's choose a creature within 30 feet. You can include yourself in that, and the next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw they make is made at advantage. Your Channel Divinity at second level is you can use the reaction to have damage you received, essentially giving you sort of an uncanny dodge ability tied to your Channel Divinity. At 6th level, we now extend that out to an ally within 30 feet, gets to use their reaction, or you can use your reaction to have the damage a creature within 30 feet takes using your Channel Divinity. I gave them Divine Strike. Perhaps this should be potent spellcasting, but I gave them Divine Strike, dealing the weapons damage type to the target. And then Fortune Favors the Bold at 17th level. As a bonus action for a minute, incoming attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and this recharges on a short or long rest, basically giving you sort of the benefits almost of a Cloak of Displacement without the if you take damage, it's halved. The thought process being, you are so lucky. I was kind of inspired by like Felix Felicis, where they, at least in the Harry Potter books, when they drank that and got into duels, curses and things just missed them like magically because of their good luck. So I thought that would be a good version of that as well. But yeah, I'm always ready for changes and criticism that we can go through and adjust this. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it would be interesting enough to play, but let me know, would you want to play something like this? Because I don't think the only reference to kind of luck gods in the player's handbook is the trickery domain, and that is definitely, I don't feel like it translates at all. Number 3. The Battle Rager Barbarian in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide is just one of the worst subclasses out there. And it was also when they were weird about gating classes behind specific races, because that's how it was in the Forgotten Realms. So I worked with my good friend Firebringer Axel. I did a lot of work on trying to design an updated version of that I was just calling an updated Battle Rager. We changed the name, and he actually changed the name to Path of the Spined Ravager, sort of an updated name. This is available on D&D Beyond, by the way, but I'll show it to you here. So basically at 3rd level, you get proficiency in heavy armor and all forms of spiked armor. You suffer no penalties for sleeping in armor, and you can rage while wearing heavy armor. The thought process is, in almost all of the books that they reference the Battle Ragers, the Drizzt novels specifically, they basically reference it as plate mail with spikes. And then here's a little bit about spiked armor in general. When wearing spiked armor, you can use it to make a melee attack, dealing a d8 piercing damage, basically having big spikes, so you have your own weapon as part of this. And then if you're not proficient, you take damage if you move in it. You can purchase spiked armor in leather armor, hide armor, breastplate, half plate, or full plate, and as well as shields. They cost a little bit more, but when worn by a proficient creature, any creature that touches the wearer, including grappling or being grappled, or hits them with a melee attack within 5 feet, takes 1 piercing damage. Now, this bit of spiked armor, this is just generic stuff for anyone. So if you wanted to get proficiency in spiked armor, let's say, and you weren't a barbarian, and anybody goes to touch you or hit you, they'll take piercing damage. The benefit of being the Battle Rager or the Spine Ravager here is the level 3 ability here, Bristling Fury. While you're wearing your spiked armor and raging, creatures that hit you with a melee attack within 5 feet suffer piercing damage equal to your rage damage. So normally it would just be 1 piercing damage, but if you're raging, they will take it equal to your rage damage. So that's 2 to 4 points of damage. At 6th level, you get Reckless Resolve. Whenever you use Reckless Attack, you gain temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. When you use Reckless Attack while raging, you add your proficiency bonus to the temporary HP gained. So this is, if you're raging when you use Reckless Attack, which reminder is all enemy attacks against you, you have advantage, but all enemy attacks against you have advantage. You will basically be adding your proficiency bonus plus your con mod in temporary hit points. So you can continue to do this as a way to keep yourself up and in the fight, and I thought that is very reflective of the way Battle Ragers are handled in the novels and the lore. Barbed Blitz at level 10. When you move at least 20 feet on your turn before making a melee weapon attack with your armor spikes, which as we talked about are a d8 that you get, that attack deals an additional 2d8 piercing damage on a hit. This is kind of based on sort of how the charge mechanics works for most animals. And then this is, again, a thing from the lore, and I'll explain. If you reduce a medium or small creature to 0 hit points with an attack, they are impaled on your spikes until the start of the next turn, providing you with cover. Medium creature gives 3/4 cover, and a small creature gets half cover, and then you can dash as a bonus action while you're raging. The benefits of this is actually from the lore, where with a helmet spike, one of the Battle Ragers impaled an enemy and used them to basically absorb arrow shots while they were running through, just having them kind of attached in like dead body hanging off of their helmet spike. And lastly, keep your enemies closer. When you successfully grapple a creature, that creature suffers piercing damage equal to your strength mod, and a creature you're grappling takes piercing damage equal to your strength modifier every time it attempts to escape your grapple. So even if they fail, they still take it, or even if they succeed, they do. And if you choose to grapple a creature with both hands, you can use an action to basically hug them and then shake them and grind them against your armor spikes. They must make a strength save based off of your strength modifier. On a failure, they take 8d8 damage plus your strength modifier, and it applies your rage damage to that as well if you're raging. So, and they can attempt, if they succeed, they can attempt to break the grapple as a reaction. However, again, they'll still take the damage if they attempt to break it. Number 2. As part of my work with Jetpack 7 on the Blackstorm Realms book, that is Beta 9 of that has released out there to folks who backed the Kickstarter, I developed an Oath of Exploration Paladin. This is sort of a space-faring thing, not a space, using 5e rules, like similar with Dark Matter is kind of like a space setting using 5e rules. This is D&D kind of in space, if you want to think about it that way. But anyway, I thought I'd show it off. So here it is from inside the beta. So you can see here's the exploration, the tenants, and you get the following spells: Find Familiar, Goodberry, Knock, Pass Without Trace, Gaseous Form, Tiny Hut, Arcane Eye, Dimension Door, Legend Lore, Pass Wall as your spells. And then your channel divinities are Explorer Sight. As an action, you can commune with the space around you and learn the general direction and distance to an item or creature with which you are familiar, which is currently in the same plane of existence. You're given a linear direction, not a path. Or Alacrity. As a bonus action, you double your movement speed for 1 minute. Your aura at level 7 is the Aura of Movement. You and friendly creatures within 10 feet of you are not affected by difficult terrain, and magic can't reduce your speed. Aura obviously increases to 30 feet at 18th level. Enduring Explorer at 15th level, you can breathe normally in any environment and have advantage on saving throws made against harmful gases and vapors. In addition, whenever you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level, if any, is decreased by 1. Thought process here is you are basically a space-faring traveler exploring all sorts of unknown realms. So you can possibly, if you're looking for something, your channel divinity can help you there. You have a possibility to increase your movement speed or not be slowed down by difficult terrain to allow you to traverse whatever you're planning to traverse. You have something like Legend, Lore, and Pass Wall to get the information to help you there. Dimension Door and Arcane Eye, also exploratory and movement-based. Tiny Hut for protection if you need a place to stay. Gaseous Form, again, another one to allow you to move about. Knock to get you into places you couldn't get into. Pass Without Trace to sneak around. Find Familiar for more scouting options. And then Goodberry to provide you, sustenance daily. Enduring Explorer, again, the concept was you could breathe in the vacuum of space. And then lastly, Wayfinder at level 20. As a bonus action, you gain the following benefits for a minute. You gain True Sight out to 120 feet. You gain a climb and swim speed equal to your walking speed. You can take the dash action as a bonus action, and you cannot be grappled, paralyzed, or restrained. Once you use this bonus action, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest unless you expend a 5th level spell slot to use it again. Again, the thought process here is paladins have that awesome 20th level kind of transformation ability. Yours is to allow you to do exploration better, right? You can see things with True Sight. You get the climb and swim speed. Dash action as a bonus action. Paladins typically don't have a lot of great bonus action utility anyway, and then can't be grappled, paralyzed, or restrained. So we're just continuing that you are free to move around and do what you need to do, and this can be beneficial in combat or out of combat as well. Number 1. And last but not least, also made for Blackstone Realms, is my Gravity Domain Cleric. I really like this one a lot, plus it's got this epic art that they had made for it, which I thought was pretty sweet. So we can go ahead and take a look here. The only thing that I will say is kind of a bummer is it hasn't made it into this yet, is the quirks that I added for being tied to the Gravity Domain, allowing you to just have, usually these are for sorcerers, but I wanted to add this as well. So here's my little quirk table, glide around the ground rather than walk. When you bleed or sweat, the drops flip upward. You have trouble remembering when you let go of something that it doesn't continue to float. When you're asleep, you sleep 4 feet above the covers. Sometimes things you touch start to float afterwards, but only for a few seconds. Dust, rocks, and other small objects orbit around you. You're occasionally hit in the head by fruit. Most of the time it's apples. And your weight fluctuates with your emotions. And then here are your domain spells: Featherfall, Jump, Hold Person, Levitate, Fly, Slow, Freedom of Movement, Resilient Sphere, Hold Monster, and Telekinesis. You get proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. And then we have Gravimetry Reduction here at first level. Your jump distance is doubled, and you don't need to move at all to make a running jump or a running long jump or running high jump. Additionally, your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor, and you count as one size larger when determining your carrying capacity and the weight you can push, drag, or lift. A lot of these are not really super impactful things. Really almost any of them. The only one that has like a true, I'd say, mechanical benefit is the speed not being reduced by wearing heavy armor, because the distance that you still have to use your movement. So even if your jump is doubled, and you might not be able to jump that far because you're limited by your movement. And carrying capacity can be useful or not, depending on your DM. We have Gravity Well at second level. As an action, present your holy symbol. Each creature within 30 feet must make a strength save. On a failure, they're either pushed or pulled 15 feet away from you. You choose when you use the ability. If this would push or pull a creature into a solid object or another creature, all creatures affected take bludgeoning damage equal to 2d6 plus your cleric level, and they can choose to fail the saving throw. Additionally, unsecured objects in the area are likewise pulled or pushed 15 feet. This concept is you're either pushing stuff out or pulling it in. You can use this to collide creatures together, but you also could use this to have people fail it and be pushed out of the way of something else or pulled towards you if you're trying to maneuver and position your allies as well. 6th level is friction control. People had a big issue with the name of this, so this is where we're still at right now. While conscious, you cannot be moved against your will and you ignore difficult terrain. Additionally, your movement speed increases by 10 feet. Divine Strike is force damage for this class, a D8 and then another D8 at 14th level. And then Unbound at 17th level, you gain a fly speed equal to of 60 feet and can hover. Additionally, you learn the reverse gravity spell and it counts as a cleric spell for you. You always have it prepared, doesn't count against the number you can prepare, and you can cast reverse gravity once without expending a spell slot. Once you cast it in this way, you can't do so until you finish a long rest. The only other thing I still haven't decided on is if I should add something into when you get the domain spells, because this lets you get reverse gravity at 17th level, where typically you could have reverse gravity, I believe, at... you typically have access to reverse gravity at 11th level, perhaps. I think 6th level is reverse gravity, maybe 13th level, but either way, you'd get it significantly later here. But I kept it here because I didn't want to change the way the domain spells are kind of listed, because that's how they always have been. So, yeah, this is, again, one of my favorite things that I've worked on, and I love the art that was designed for it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And then before we close out the video here, I wanted to show you one last thing that I started working on this morning. Someone mentioned in one of my comments about the on one of my videos about what designing a sort of, we know we have an oath breaker paladin, right, which is a paladin who goes back on their oath and has different abilities. So they brought up the concept of basically a circle breaker druid, right? You have your circle that you're a part of that has the certain kind of things. They don't have traditional tenets, but they have sort of things that they go about and things that they do. And what would someone who was basically broke their circle, for lack of a better term, and sort of has gone against that? So I was thinking of basically like an anti-druid or a circle breaker druid. What would that be? So I started working on it today. There's been a ton of outpouring in the comments, but then it got me thinking, what would someone who kind of went against the tenets, for lack of a better term again, of being a druid, what would that allow them to do, and what would happen? So a lot of folks have been referencing undead and necrotic damage. People have been saying transformations into aberrations. Let me show you what I've come up with so far, and it's all very preliminary, and we can adjust it, and if we get to a point where we like what we have, we'll add something new. Maybe we'll make a video on it and we'll put it out there. So this is what I started with. I thought it would be funny to allow them to have heavy armor and be able to wear metal armor, sort of the antithesis of the druid as it stands right now. And then people were saying necrotic damage, and I kind of agree with that. Some people brought up Circle of Spores druid, and I still feel like that still is a druid. You're just tied to fungus, as opposed to sort of going against the natural order. So I gave them Chill Touch, and I basically used the same breakdown of how they did the Spores Druid or the Wildfire Druid. They got a cantrip, which was Chill Touch, and then some circle spells here. And I went for things that were kind of unnatural, right? Or necrotic based. So Arms of Hadar, Inflict Wounds, Phantasmal Force, Shatter, Hunger of Hadar, Vampiric Touch, Sickening Radiance, and Summon Aberration. Now these are either otherworldly and weird, like the Hadar spells, the Summon Aberration. They're destructive, like Shatter, or they're sort of corrupting things, whether Vampiric Touch or Sickening Radiance. Another thing I looked at was the old Twilight Druid, which I thought worked pretty well, which I just renamed Harvest, whatever, to Reap. Basically, you reap the life force of other creatures. You can augment your spells to drain the life force of creatures. You get a pool of d10s equal to your druid level. When you roll damage for a spell, you can increase that damage by spending from that dice pool. You have a dice pool equal to you can spend a number equal to half your druid level or less. Roll the spent dice and add them to the damage as necrotic damage, and you regain those when you finish a long rest. Originally, the version of the Twilight Druid had the ability to heal people. If you killed someone, you could heal someone. I kind of removed that currently. And then the only other thing I was kind of toying around with was possibly a 6th level ability which was allowing you to, when you roll damage with a spell that deals acid, fire, necrotic, or poison, it gets a bonus equal to your wisdom modifier, kind of taking the ability from the alchemist artificer. Now, I'm not really sure. I've mentioned it before, but I really like it when subclasses take the opportunity to work on an established mechanic and alter it. For example, for a druid like this, it would be finding a way to utilize wild shape, but in a different way. Now, if I do this kind of reap concept where you get these D10s, this pool of D10s to add necrotic damage, which I very much like, I don't really see a way to have a fundamental way to shift your wild shape. Some people had said allow you to wild shape into monstrosities or something like that, which I still feel like isn't a huge change from being a druid. I did see some people say possibly turning your wild shape on your opponent as sort of like giving you the option to use it as almost like a polymorph spell, where rather than you turning into the animal, you turn your opponent into one instead. Again, a cool concept, but I still feel it's vaguely druidish. So I was trying to break from that concept of it. So, you know, what would you do if you were kind of the anti-druid? I feel like otherworldly things that laugh in the face of the natural order, like aberrations, things that deal damage. Some folks said maybe like tap into like a channel divinity concept, but like corrupt plants. And I think some of that could be really cool and like wither things away. I think some of that could be really cool as like similar to what we talked about with the gravity domain as sort of quirks, like maybe every step you take, the grass underneath your foot like dies or desiccates around you. I'm not sure. I like the concept of possibly tapping into when you kill something, you get health back. Truly reaping these things. Maybe we make that pool of D10s not just a static thing you get. Maybe we make it similar to sort of like the soul trinkets that the Phantom Rogue gets, where when you kill someone, you add to this pool. Maybe that's how you get it. So like you have to reap something from the world, take something out of the natural order to get power to do something. I don't know. I have a ton of comments on Twitter, but I'd like to expose it to the larger YouTube audience. What would you do? What do you think about what I got so far? What would you change? Let's work on it together. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to the Wanderer's Guide to Merchants and Magic for sponsoring this video. Thank you once again to my patrons as well over on Patreon for choosing this as the topic. I hope I didn't upset too many people by choosing some of my homebrew options as like subclasses that I reworked that already existed. Frankly, I haven't designed that many homebrew subclasses. This would have basically been a top 5 video had I not done that. But I thought there was decent work done on those other ones that they needed that kind of recognition. I'm also working on a dragon patron warlock, a Ghostbuster themed artificer subclass. And that's kind of where I'm at right now as far as things that I'm designing. More to come in the future though, if stuff kind of bubbles up in my head and I've got good ideas. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.